Well, hello my friends. Alfredo here, the Rebel Turner. I'm back. I already started without turning on the camera, go figure. Yeah, the reason for that is because I came out here specifically to start turning that wild piece that was here. And I look in the shed and of course I see these amazing pieces of wood that keep screaming at me as well. I mean, I have this triple crotch that will be something pretty interesting in here. You got 3 bits going through this, so I got 2 pieces out of this, and I was just about tempted to start turning this one. But I know I promised that one for a little bit, so I guess I will go to that piece, even though that one is screaming out at me a little bit more. So the initial piece that I discussed, I already put it on the bandsaw, took out 1 limb out of it, which will be nice. It will be nice for something else. But for today, I just want to get this crotch area here that catches these 3 limbs ready for turning. And that's all it's going to be. It's going to be fairly small. This will be the bottom, and they will be shaping up towards this top concave that's over here. And this is a ficus tree, a very odd ficus tree. This thing was planted in my yard maybe 12, 13 years ago, and it has overtaken the whole front of my yard because this is a type of ficus somewhat like a banyan. Now, if you're familiar with a banyan tree grows the main stump, and then the branches come out and it starts bringing down these other root systems that come from all the stumps, and it creates a web, a huge canopy of all these main stumps, and all these other stumps come out from branches above, and sometimes the branches above are thicker than the original stump. It just grows its form and lets these branches come down and make anchor points or making bridges for it to support itself, and it just keeps on going and going and going. Well, this ficus did exactly the same thing. First it starts off with these little vines that come off going to the ground. Sometimes they twist themselves up and it creates a mess. It killed one of the surrounding trees around it, which was a jasmine. Smelled beautiful, beautiful flowers, and this thing just decided to come right down the middle of it and branch itself from the middle of the jasmine, and it just forced the jasmine to kind of stagger out away from it a little bit. So it wasn't a pretty tree. I ended up clipping quite a bit that back, see if it's going to bloom. I chopped back this one quite a bit. There's still a long ways to go for me to be able to get this tree under control. Out of control tree for sure. So anyway, I decided out of the clippings that I would see what it might have to offer. I've turned some beautiful stuff out of ficus, but not this type of ficus. And those of you you are all wondering, how is it I'm coming up to my bandsaw and just starting it up as soon as I go without reaching over? I got a foot switch on the bandsaw setup. And I find that to be pretty convenient and safe. Because if something goes wrong, I just pick up my foot and the problem is gone. You know me. Spur drive. Spur drive between centers. That is it. You know, all the time that I've been turning, and I've said this before, I've never ever used a faceplate. Number one is because when I first got my first lathe, I didn't have a faceplate to go with it. The plates that came with it were the wrong thread configuration, so therefore I never really had to use a faceplate. So when I finally got faceplates to go with this particular lathe, well, I didn't find a need for them. When I didn't have them, I really thought that I needed them. I was desperately trying to figure out how I could have faceplates rethreaded to fit my original lathe, and like I said, was something that was just a thought and not necessarily something that was actually required. In my case, it's never been required. So did it force me to find ways to do this wood turning without it? Maybe. But I really am at a point that I don't think that we as turners necessarily need a faceplate. Now this is going to have a little bit of interest going through this triple crotch. I'm going to come up, it's not going to be that big. I'm going to come up to the inside of this or the top edge of this and maintaining the top all as natural edge. 5/8 current sun bowl gouge, speed going to be about maybe 500-600 RPM on this piece. That's 600 RPM. So ready to go and chew this up fairly quick. It's not going to take that long. Number one, this wood is very green, and green wood, you know, is easy to cut. It's a lot easier on your tools than the dry wood. Coming from the middle out. Keep sneaking your tool rest as you're progressing. Sometimes on videos, on the editing, I notice that my tool rest looks like it's a lot further than what it actually is. I try to keep my tool rest fairly close. There are times that I can't get my tool close enough to where I would want it to be, so therefore I might be overhanging the tool a little bit more, but that's only on the times that I can't possibly get my tool rest in there. If you have curved tool rests, anything that will help you get it a little closer, by all means use those. know, when I'm turning, a lot of times the idea for what I want to turn. Okay, as I was saying, a lot of times when I'm turning, and I might have something in my mind as to what I'm going to create, but the idea for what I actually create comes from the ghost image that I see as I'm turning this. And as I'm turning this, I'm seeing this as a, I don't know how to explain it, but a wide bottom and returning back up towards the top. Almost like a hollow vessel and not necessarily a bowl. And that's what I see on this particular piece. So let me see if I can show you that as it's spinning. You can see the wide bottom and the solid going up into a cone shape. Can you see that? Can you see it from this back camera? It's kind of coned in the middle and coming up. So I am going to follow that for a little bit and see what it looks like as I do that. Cleaning it up a little bit because this is actually getting a little bit more balance. Come on, camera, focus up. So basically this is the shape that I was seeing as I was turning, was this going in towards the back side of the piece. Just got a little bit more to turn and it will eliminate some of this bark area. Not that I really wanted to, but you work with what the wood is presenting you. This inclusion, seeing that all of this looks somewhat fresh cut, doesn't really belong here. So I have a little bit of room that I can, the brown will still stay, but not the missing part of the wood. On something like this, it would be something worthwhile looking at and possibly filling it with an epoxy. And I might do that on this particular piece. Now, I've created enough that I can get my tenon up. And I'm going to put this on my 100mm jaws. which is a Supernova 2 chuck. Even though it's a heavy duty chuck, I still somewhat like turning with that other chuck, which is a cheaper chuck. Better because I like the idea of being able to tighten this up a little bit easier with the other chuck. Still gotta use a key, but that one works with the locked spindle, and that's how I get the best out of it. Time to go in here and kind of reshape this a little bit, speed up the lathe now. Just want to get rid of this turnover over here, so I just got to go a little bit more so all the box stands on an outward orientation. Now this is going to be a very fuzzy piece. The grain does not cut very well, as you can see. I got all these raised fibers. On a case like this, a torch will help you out quite a bit on drying some of this up and being able to cut it back. Get rid of your wood shavings. And this will produce a really, really nice wood grain, similar to the banyan tree, with a lot of striping going in, not pronounced in color, but pronounced in pattern. I don't worry about this scorching up a little bit. The only thing I'm concerned with is not to overdo it where the wood actually splits on you. And this type of a split would not be like a natural checking that I would be okay with. This would be a different type of a crack. It would be a stressful stress mark on it. That would probably make the piece not usable. And if you're doing burning, you're much better off with the lathe stopped and controlling how much you got than you having the lathe running even at a slow speed. Because it will burn different from spot to spot, so therefore with it stopped, you can control and get a good visual on what's happening with a piece rather than the same amount of heat all over the place, because it doesn't require or it doesn't burn equally by doing it that way. Like over here, it's very dense, so if I want anything to dry up on here, I literally have to stay on this area a lot longer, so I will move the torch back and forth based on that. And use your judgment on this, on something like this. You know, you can very well maintain the burned look if that's what you desire. And I might do that at the end, depending on how I see it. It won't change the grain, it will only highlight the grain. Now, before I spend any time sanding this, I will turn the inside, because a lot of the moisture, by doing that, I will be getting rid of a lot of the moisture that's in it, and therefore the piece will dry up a lot quicker as I'm turning it. You know, even though this is very green, by the time I get to the thickness that I want on this, more than 50% of the moisture will be gone on this piece. It will go from 98% moisture content, which I'm sure that's probably what it has now, to about a 35-40% moisture content. And although I've never bothered with testing the moisture content on pieces, I'm pretty sure that's what it's going to be about. Don't quote me on it, but roughly. So now that the overall shape of the piece is already established, it's time to go in here and start hollowing it out, leaving all this top edge natural. Bottom has a little ways to go. Around this base over here, but I gotta go a little deeper on that. I got a little bit of raised up fibers on the inside as well. So I'll burn them up. The piece is fairly thin. I gotta be careful now how much heat I apply, because this is a point that you really can split it up. And you can see that this is not a split yet, but that will end up being a split depending on how much heat I apply on there. So again, same as before, the lathe stopped, and just burn up the raised fibers. And then I'll go in there and scrape it up one more time. I'll use a scraper. Could probably get away with it with just sanding it at this point. Now the bowl is still not even warm on the outside, so I know that I'm not applying too much heat to the... Okay, time to go in there one more time and lightly scrape it and then sand it. Beautiful. Same thing with the outside. Lightly touch it. Yorkshire grit for my final sanding on this. It was sanded roughly with 80 grit, and but well sanded with the 80 grit, and the fine steel wool, which really doesn't cut that much, it just polishes it in a sense. So Right now it's ready to apply some Yorkshire grit, and I know that that is not how this is intended to be used. They recommend that you do your sanding with all the grits and go into a sanding seal prior to applying this. But you know something, if I gotta do all those steps to it, I might as well not use it. Because what I got this for is not to add another step into my turning. It's to remove some steps from my turning. And I find that I get by very well with using this with minimal sanding, and what I achieve, I'm happy with. Does not mean that you have to follow the same procedure, because you might like it a little shinier than I like it. So if that is the case with you and you like to see the ultimate finish, then follow the recommended usage on this. I can only imagine if I'm achieving what I'm achieving with it, with just doing the light sanding that I do and applying it without the sanding sealer and not going through all the grits, I can't imagine what the pieces would look like if I went through all of that work. I'm assuming it would be quite a piece, or quite a look. Not necessarily what I'm looking for, but it would be quite a polish to it. So I will only do to the way I like it done, not to necessarily to recommend it usage on this. Now I know of 3 distributors on this. The originator, of course, is Glenn Senior, and once in a while he comes on my channel as well. So if you see his name pop up, hit him up, and he'll hook you up with who in the area sells the Yorkshire grit closest to you. But I know that it's him on the UK. There might be others, but so I'm only specifying the ones I know. The Walnut Log, that's the name of his website, sells it in the US. And in Canada, my friend Rob Summerlin. And those are distributors that I know of for the Yorkshire grit, both this and the microfine. Now the microfine, I'm sure, does as well of a job as this does for the next step. But again, I'm not going to be using much of that fine stuff unless I was doing some acrylic that I really need to get the shine coming through. Now most of you know that my finish of choice is the OB Shine Juice, and I apply that 90% of the time to all my turnings. But even though this is green, I think I actually want to apply a different finish on this one. I want to go with the lacquer finish as well. Well, I've let this stand here for a few minutes, and for those of you who in the past have said you love the sound of rain, well, I asked for this just for you. It's my music that will be playing in the background. Will be the rain falling on the tin roof. Anyway, this has had one coat of lacquer, and it's time that I go in there and sand it up with some fine steel wool. This is fine. This is like 1,000 grit. So I'm going to go in there and sand this down a little bit. Just knock off any bubbles, anything like that, very lightly. Okay, it's been sanded down, and I've applied a couple of coats of the OB Shine Juice mixture to the finish. And smooth. And it's giving me a nice sheen to this piece. This really is my finish of choice. Whenever I can, OB Shine Juice, 1/3 shellac, 1/3 denatured alcohol, 1/3 boiled linseed oil. And I have to thank Captain Eddie, because he's the one that introduced me to this. Although Captain Eddie doesn't respond to my comments or anything like that, I think he's one of those that does not approve of my methods. Well, it is done. It's turned out pretty nice. Pretty nice. The wood grain that goes through, it's not overly pronounced. but it's there making a very subtle statement. The little bark inclusions that go through make the whole piece. It really makes a wow factor out of it. The bottom piece, well, I was thinking that I was going to fill that up, but I will leave that as part of its character as well. Anything that I can give to this piece to enhance it a little bit, because it is overall blend, you really have to stare at to see the very mild grain that it has on it, wood patterns. So therefore you need something else that will make a little statement. I see a pit here, the opposite side right there. It has a couple of other small inclusions, and one is right there, which is not very well seen, but here's the growth ring pattern. So it shows up three very distinct growth patterns, rings, here on the bottom, and the other one right there. The bark on the top edge looks pretty good. The bark is very thin on this wood. It's not a high bark, so therefore you're not going to get a lot out of it. The fibers between the bark and the sapwood are very fuzzy, kind of like the barrel brush. Barrel brush is impossible to sand the transition between the bark and the sapwood, so therefore I burned them to get them to dry up enough for the sandpaper to be able to cut. This one was no exception. This one was exactly the same way. And you can see that little dark area going in between the bark and the sapwood, and that's what that is. That's that little bit of fuzz that stays within the piece and refuses to be cut. It just flaps over. Inside looks pretty good as well. And bottom, well, I already showed that. The shape is pleasing. The piece is not great, but either way, it will make a nice decorative piece for somebody's table or bookshelf or anything of that sort. You're not going to put soup in it, but you will decorate with it. Thanks for watching again. Don't forget, like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Hit that little bell subscribe button, therefore you will get notifications as to when I post my next video. Thanks again, we'll see you very soon.